Okay, let's get started. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a timer script. And this is super duper useful. I've used this a million times in lots of different places. What it's basically for is an easy way to get any kind of thing to do any kind of other thing in any kind of amount of time, which sounds like a terrible way of describing it, but you've used it a lot already, I promise. Anytime you need a weapon cooldown, or you want to set something on fire and you want it to do damage over time, or really any instance in which you need some delay for something to happen, you use some kind of time delay, either a coroutine, which is commonly the answer, or maybe you do timer code in your scripts where you make a little float variable and you update it in the update, and if it's beyond a certain point. But that's kind of messy to have in your game scripts. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a self-contained raw C# timer script that you can use in anywhere else and just update it, and it'll handle all of your timing. We're going to use system.actions, and we're going to pass it whatever action we want, and let's just get into it, describing it. So let's create a C# script, and we'll call it timer. Opening that in Visual Studio. Excuse me. Okay, we're not going to need any of this because we're not going to be inheriting from mono behavior. We're going to make it raw. We're also going to be using system because we're going to need actions, and if you haven't used actions before, they're event delegates that you can basically pass any method to and have it do that thing. It'll become clear in a moment if you haven't used it. So first things first, we are going to need private float timer. This is going to be the variable that actually holds the time elapsed so that we know what we're working with. We're going to use a couple other ones. We're going to have a duration, clearly. We'll make this private as well. No, let's make this a property. Duration, and this is going to be get return. Actually, no. Get. It's going to be gettable, but not settable. Privately settable. And that's just that. Right? We don't need to be able to set this outside of the class. It's just going to be for us to use inside. We're also going to need, well, not for this tutorial, but you'll probably want this, another property called ratio. And what this is going to be for is if you use this to do any kind of loading bars or visual updates and you need to know what percentage of completion the timer is, this is a very useful way of doing this. So this one's going to be get return our timer over our duration. And that is all we need for that. Okay, we need a bool. We need a reset timer on complete bool. And what this is going to be for is if you want the timer to repeat to do something once it's done, we'll set this and it'll just loop itself indefinitely until you decide to stop. And then lastly, we're going to need our two actions. Well, technically we only need one, but we're going to put in two just for fun. No, not acceleration event, action on complete callback and on update callback. I find a lot of times you want a separate action to be called every frame while the timer's counting, useful for updating any visual effects or feedback you might have. Like say for example somebody's on fire and you want to do something to them every frame while they're on fire but only deal them the fire damage every few seconds, you might want to use a separate one. For this example we probably won't use this, but I want to include it just so that you know how to use it. And let's make our constructor. Not timer. So we're going to need a duration, so float duration. We're going to need a boolean for reset. I'm just going to copy this, make it easier on myself. An action for on complete callback and an action for on update callback, which I'm going to default to null because we don't always need that. So in here, we'll just set some default stuff. Yep, we're going to set our duration equal to the duration we get passed, which we don't need to use the this there, but I like to do it for consistency. No, not that. reset. It's going to be equal to reset. And then for the two actions, we're going to subscribe them. This is how, this is one way to use them. If the onComplete we're given is not null, then we'll just set this one to subscribe to the new one. What that's doing is the onComplete action right here, the one that we have in the class, is going to add this one to it so that whenever this one gets called, that one gets called too. It's just one of the ways to use actions. We could have set it equal to that. We could also have done other things with it, but this is just the way that I think is a good way of doing it. If I'm wrong, please let me know. And we'll do the same for the onUpdate. So update plus equals, not 9 equals, onUpdate. Okay, that's all we need to do for our constructor. Let's do one more little thing that we might need, which is going to be public void reset timer. We need a reset script method because there may be a lot of reasons why we would just want to set the timer back to 0, one of which you will see directly, F, because it's a float. Okay, so there's our reset timer. Let's do the main method, the most important one here, void update clock. This is where all of our actual work, grinding gears, are going to be happening. So in update clock, first thing we need to do is check to see if our timer is less than our duration, because we don't want to be incrementing our clock if we've already surpassed the duration. And if it is, timer, just go ahead and increment plus equals time.delta time to just increment that. And this is also where we will call our onUpdate if it's not null. OnUpdate is not null, then we'll just call it. So that'll get called every frame while the clock is updating. Then, if our timer is greater than or equal to our duration, so the duration has elapsed, we want to do stuff. We want to do whatever the method we've been sent. So if our onComplete callback is not equal to null, we'll call onComplete right here, just like that. And also, while we're here, once we're finished with it, if we have reset, then we want to reset the timer so that it'll do it again forever and ever and ever. Why? Oh, reset timer. There we go. So that is actually the meat of it. It's pretty simple. We update the clock. When the clock's done, we call whatever method we've been sent. If we want to do it again, we do it again. But to make this super duper clear, we're going to go do a little example with it. So let's come back into Unity, let that compile for a second, and we'll make let's make a cube. 3D object cube. Okay, good. And we'll make a quick cube script to make use of this. Cube script. Okay, so we don't need this for now. Let's just do a few little maintenance things. We're going to need a private mesh renderer. This is just what I'm going to do for the cube is I'm just going to make it change to a random color. So we're going to need this. We will need a public float color change duration so that we know how long it's going to be. We're going to pass this to our timer, and of course we'll need timer, color timer. Let's set those together. So here in awake, I like to do my get components in awake whenever possible. Mesh renderer equals get component mesh renderer. Okay, that just gets that out of the way. And then what we need to do now is we need to define what we want to happen when the timer is completed. So let's make a method for that. This can be private, it can be public. One of the great things about this is you can make it private and then nothing else needs to know about it. So we'll just change color. Right. Okay, so in here, it'll be real simple. We'll get our mesh renderer material.color, and we'll just set that equal to random.color HSV, just random color. And then the last thing we need to do, well, not the last, the second to last thing to do is in start, we need to actually create the timer. So the color timer that we just made is equal to a new timer, and we'll pass it all the info that it wants. So it wants a duration, color change duration. It wants to know whether it wants to reset on complete, and we do, so we'll just send true there. And it needs an action, so we'll send change color. And we will not send it in on update because we don't need it to do anything like that for now. Now, the very last step is to actually tell it to update the clock. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to tell these timers to update, otherwise they won't do anything. And that's actually really useful because sometimes you might not want a timer to be going. Like for example, if you have like a state machine for a monster, and you only want a monster to do something while it is fleeing from the player, then you would only update the clock in its fleeing state. But for now, for the purposes of this example, we will just update it right here in update. So if our color timer is not null, I want to make sure that it's been initialized. Color timer dot, not initialize, update clock. And that should do it. Let's see what we can see. So cube, we're going to go ahead and add our cube script. And all we need to do is set this to 1 second and just play it and see what happens. So 1 second, random color, random color, random color. It did change to black twice in a row, but you can see that it is actually changing to random colors. And that's as simple as it is. You can put whatever you wanted in here. I chose to throw in the color change because it's just a really easy example, but anything that you need to have happen, you can just attach to one of these timers and tell it to do it, either infinitely or only once. And that'll do it for this one. Hopefully you learned something.